So we are.
Recording in progress. Sorry about that.
Hold on, let me fix that for her on here.
You're on.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so we're here in the big city of Lubbock, where the Dixie Chicks came from, and Matt Davis and a lot of other famous people. But my dear friend Cindy lives here, and so Misty brought me up here to visit my friend, and you know, Bill W. had a Ebby is the man that took the message of sobriety to Bill W. And Ebby called Bill W. his beloved. And I've had, there's 7 women, strong women, through the years that have been sponsored, have been fellow sufferers, 7 that have been my beloveds through the years. 5 of them have passed away. So the 2 that are left are Miss Misty and Cindy. They are my beloveds. And I have other good friends, but these are friends that are like family. So we've had a good time here visiting with Cindy and her puppy dog, and so we'll eat lunch and then be on our way home. So what I'm going to talk about this morning is the big subject that, and I'm surprised if there's not more on. Maybe they'll listen to YouTube or something. But what we're going to talk about is the weight loss shots, the medications. And I'll tell you this, when I weighed 260, 270, 280, my top weight 287, if they had come out with this medication then, I'd be the first in line to get it. And I have done, I think a lot of research on it. I've talked to a lot of people about it that have been on it. And I really haven't talked to anyone that has had the severe, what am I trying to say? The symptoms of it. What am I trying to say?
The shot?
Yeah.
The shot?
Side effects.
Side effects.
Side effects. Thank you. Side effects. I have never known anyone, I haven't talked to anyone that had the severe side effects. The ones that I've talked to have been very successful on it. And some of them, that started out morbidly obese will probably stay on it the rest of their lives. And so I just want to say this, I am not against the shot. I am for it, and I think it is going to change the obesity rate in our United States. We are the fattest country in the world, and we have every weight loss possibility in the world of ways to lose weight. So I did want to talk about the GLP-1 in that it started actually, and y'all probably know this, but what it did, it started in, Denmark, the Scandinavian countries are really good at doing research. They research a lot of things. So the research took place in Denmark, and in 2005, came out with the first GLP-1 drug, but it was for diabetes. And what they were seeing is that it was helping their diabetic clients, and also what it was doing, they were losing weight. But they didn't really expand on that until 2014, and that's when it was approved for weight loss. And then Ozempic came along in 2017, and that's widely used in weight loss. That's when the weight loss really began to gain attention. And in 21, Wegovy, is that it? Was approved for weight management. So now rapid growth in use in newer drugs. They have newer drugs coming out. And what they're seeing is a lot of success. and they're not seeing a lot of harm other than those who cannot take it. Their systems reject it, and that percentage is not real high. So what it gives you is it stops the food noise. That's part of any addiction cycle is what goes on in our head. It's that noise that, you may not even be thinking about overeating, and then you sit down and watch TV and you see a commercial about something to eat, and you think, well, I've got it in the refrigerator or something like it. And so before you know it, you're in there eating out of the refrigerator. I don't think normies do that. I don't think normies stand and eat out of the refrigerator. Maybe they do, I don't know. But I would stand and eat out of the refrigerator, anything to fill up that hole in the soul. And like I said, have said before, I was a volume eater. I was very addicted to sugar and high carbs, and but I needed a lot of volume to food to shut down the feelings. Okay, so what GLP does is the use of it has increased by 300%. There's millions of people using this drug, and it's increased, like I said, over 300%. The average weight loss is 10 to 20% of body weight, and the reality of the regain is 2/3 of the people, when they get off of the medication, gain the weight back. So that's what it tells us in the eating disorder field. Look at that baby. Look at that little baby puppy doggy. How sweet. Don't let Kim see it. She'll take it away from you. No, she's got to finish school first. She says, I don't want a puppy till I get through school. So, 2/3 of the people, when they get off the medication, gain the weight back. So, that tells us that it takes more than the medication. And what I've heard that people say, it slows the digestion down. It reduces the appetite. You're not as hungry on it. And, most compulsive overeaters have huge appetites, huge. And it affects hunger and weight signals in the brain. That's that noise. And I think that probably is appeal to more people than anything, is to shut out the noises in the brain. And normies don't have that. Alcoholics have it toward alcohol. Drug addicts have it for drug addiction. Those of us with food problems have it in our brain about food. And it talks, we may be just innocently sitting at our desk at work or whatever we're doing, or sitting in a pew in church, and all we can think about is what we're going to eat when we get home, or we're going to go out to eat, and what are we going to eat, and will it be enough? I know when I was at my highest weight, to go out to eat, and if we went to like a banquet or something, I knew I wasn't going to get enough. I was always afraid there wasn't enough. So I would eat before I went. I'd eat 2 or 3 peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and then go to the banquet and, eat. I'd kind of pick at my food, and anyway, because I didn't want to overeat in front of people. But then I'd get home and I'd eat again, because my brain required it, my body required it, my soul, my very soul required the food, and lots of it. Because if I didn't have the food, what would happen was the feelings would come up, and I wouldn't know what to do with the feelings. And so when I'd have the feelings, what it would tell my brain, and my brain would tell my stomach, is go get something to eat. And I knew every time it would work. Every time. It never failed. It never failed to work. It did get to where toward the end it took more and more food. And so, but what the key takeaway is medication helps regulate the body, but it doesn't automatically, it does not heal the emotional or behavioral patterns. And that's what I think is lacking. And, because you get the medication from doctors, although I've noticed that Weight Watchers has it, different places, everyone is offering the shots. But what else are they offering? What we look at is that this is a twofold illness, compulsive overeating. Any form of an eating disorder is twofold. It's like alcoholism, it's like drug addiction. It has a physical component. And I'll tell you that shot is helping a lot of people with the physical component. But what they're missing, I think, the second part of the disease is that mental and emotional side. And I don't know if they're even touching that. I don't know if they even mention it. But that's what distinguish, people that, this is a disease. It's not something, just a little overeating problem. And if we don't treat those underlying causes and conditions, we'll either go back to eating, go back to the food, or we'll switch to another addiction. So, and then we ask ourselves, people are asking themselves, everyone's asking about, do people have to stay on the weight loss shots forever? And the short answer is not always, but many people, long-term use is often needed to maintain results. What I'm interested in, and I know a lot of people have used it that are 10, 20, 30 pounds overweight. And I have no problem with that. It's none of my business. But what I'm excited about is the people that we've treated that are like over 200 pounds, 200, 250, 300, all the way up to 710 pounds. Those are the ones that I'm concerned about. Because even if down the line, sometimes if the shot proves that maybe it's not healthy for them, I'll tell you, how healthy is it to carry around an excess 100, 200, 300, 400 pounds? Dad is dead. You're going to die from obesity. Obesity is a killer. And so I'm for anything that can help people. Okay, so what it does, if the reason people do stay on it is because they get results. It reduces, not produces, it reduces the appetite. Boy, wouldn't that be a miracle? It reduces the appetite. And then it quiets the food noise. And that food noise, I said in my head, that's what separates that food noise, or that the alcoholics, thinking, that stinking thinking. All of that is that mental and emotional side of the disease. And when that starts, what the eating disorder person does is we reach out to food. Alcoholic reaches out to alcohol. The drug addict reaches out to a drug, because the pain of living can be so, it can be so painful. So we look for solutions, and food has been a solution. Like for me, it was my solution from age 4 until 40 years ago. And I could tell you every way in the world to lose weight, but I'm not going to waste your time or mine either by telling you ways to lose weight, because I did it all. And I would lose 140, 150 pounds and regain it back, usually within the same year. I did that 5 different times. So the problem is much more than the food. The problem is much more than the weight. It is what drives us back to the food. Okay, so what happens, and we've seen this, is, what it does, it quiets the food noise, and it helps regulate hunger signals. And but they do not fix the underlying causes. And so what happens when people stop, the hunger returns. You get hungry again. The hunger returns. The food noise increases when you stop the medication. And this is what the research has shown. And then for 2/3 of the people, the weight gain is common. Now, what in the research shows this, when people get off the shot for various reasons, maybe their insurance won't pay for it, or maybe they, feel like that maybe their health, anyway, they get off of it for different reasons. Maybe they've reached their goal weight. And unless they have treated that mental and emotional side, they will go back to using food because the feelings will reoccur. They will show up when you stop the medication. And so the research has shown that there's significant weight gain within the following year. When they go off of the medication, the hunger returns, the overeating returns, the weight returns. That's a fact. That is a fact, folks. So, and the metabolism slows way down after weight loss. It's once you lose the weight, the metabolism slows down. So when you get off of that medicine, you've got the slower metabolism, and you can overeat a little bit and gain weight. Overeat a whole lot, you can gain it all back. So obesity is often treated as a chronic condition, which it should be because it is. It's similar to high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes, which may require ongoing management. And most people that are morbidly obese have these. They'll have high blood pressure. They'll have type 2 diabetes. And when they lose the weight, we have seen it at Shades over and over and over. We'll have someone come in 100 pounds overweight, and they'll come into Shades, and that first weight comes off pretty fast. They might lose 10 or 20 pounds, and immediately their diabetes numbers go down. And so, regardless of, or no matter what, whether we like it or not, food is the villain. It is the villain for diabetics, the certain foods. And so you just have to look at the long-term management of it. Some stay on it for, they're keeping them on, and it does depend on the insurance company if they will pay for it, or we've been helping a young man get his insurance to repay. They stopped paying, and I think that is a shame and disgrace because someone could be halfway through the losing cycle and then they cut off the medication. And so from the medical, and I've already said this, perspective, obesity is often treated like, a chronic condition, which it is. And if I was still almost 300 pounds, I'd rather take my chances with some medication, that the shot, that they've had really good research to back it up, and that they have had tremendous success rate with losing the weight. I'd rather take my chances with that than, I did lose the weight by staying on a meal plan. But it wasn't just the meal plan. I went to treatment, I did therapy, and I did 12 steps. And so you absolutely can lose it without the shot. But if people will do all of that with the shot, they're going to see so much success. So the truth is, some stay on medication long term, some use it temporarily, some transition off with lifestyle and emotional work. And so the shot can support the body, but lasting change requires deeper healing and sustainable life changes. You cannot continue to live the way, like an alcoholic. we always said, when I first went into the field, and I've mentioned this before, we've always talked about, we hope that they really never came up with a pill or a shot that would stop an alcoholic from wanting to drink the drug alcohol, because you could get them sober if they didn't want to drink, through the medication they wouldn't drink. But what you have is a dry drunk. All of the emotional problems are still there that drove the addiction in the first place. So this is a twofold disease. The people with obesity, people with weight problems, there is something in our brain. We've got that brain of an addict. It's an addiction. And it is in the brain and body. And this is where I have a little problem with, and I'm, these little cute, precious junior leaguers that want to lose 10 pounds and they go get on the shot and then they lose 20 and they feel good about that, and I don't need to be critical. And I'm being critical. The shot was not designed for that. It was not designed for 10 or 20 pound weight loss. It never was. And, for a lot of people, it's just another way to be able to look good, to go to the, a special event or the Academy Awards or whatever, whatever they're up to. So it has been proven over and over that eating disorders are like alcoholism and drug addiction, is that twofold illness. And you have to have that brain chemistry. That is what sets us apart from non-addicts, is the brain chemistry. Are y'all hearing me? It's the brain chemistry. And you're going to have, if you have it, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. And our job is to treat it. If you had any other disease, you would treat it. It is a disease. If you're overweight, it's not your fault. If you're a drug addict, it is not your fault. If you're an alcoholic, a lot of people drink and they're not all alcoholic. You have to have that brain chemistry and body chemistry, and out will pop an addict. So the real problem is not about willpower. It's, people with eating disorders or any addiction, we have willpower that could stack up against anybody's. It takes a lot of willpower to go on some of those stupid diets that I'd go on, and white knuckle it. And, I'd cut those calories down to, 500 calories a day while raising a bunch of kids and not having energy to do that. But I would lose weight. And they're still coming out with those crazy diets. And so that takes a lot of will to do that. Y'all know that? It takes a lot of will for an alcoholic not to drink. It does. And that is the problem, is self-will run right. If you want to know what your problem is, if you're an addict of any sort, go look in the mirror. There is your problem. Therein lies your problem, is self-centeredness. We're so focused on ourselves, and that is true with us eating disorder people. An addict is an addict is an addict. So willpower is not the problem. People just say, well, just discipline yourself. Well, I discipline myself on, and I'd eat those 3 little bitty meals a day and I'd lose 100 pounds. And it was like the minute I would reach a certain weight on the scale, I'd go right back to the food. At church, I was always overweight at church, and then I'd go on another diet and I would lose the weight, and people would come, our pastor, because he was overweight, people that were overweight would come up, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'd tell them the diet that I was on or the book that I had read. So a bunch of them would go on it, they'd lose the weight, By that time I would have lost 100 pounds. By the time they lost their weight, I would have gained mine back. It puzzled people. It puzzled me. It puzzled other people. They'd see me one season, I'd be one size. See me at Easter, come back at Christmas, and I would have doubled in size. And that really does affect your self-esteem. It affects, everything about your it did me. Okay, people would just say, push yourself away from the table. That's all you have to do. Put your fork down. Quit eating so much. And it's just calories. Cut the calories out. That's what people, with good intentions, tell overweight people. Well, just don't eat so much. Well, hell, if we could have done it, we would have done it a long time ago. We don't need that kind of information by people that are about that big around. So what we believe is every excess pound that someone is carrying around, either the excess weight, or if you go the other way, anorexic, it represents unresolved pain, shame, and anger. Let that soak in. Particularly with your compulsive overeaters, your obese people, every excess pound that they're carrying around represents unresolved pain and anger. If you want to see anger, we'd get in these jolly, people think that all overweight people are just fun and games and jolly and laugh and all of that. And we do that to keep from crying, and we do that so we hope that we can get your attention off of our bodies and just listen to our jokes or our laughter, and so we almost become entertainers, so you will not look at the body. And we begin to live from the neck up and try to ignore from the neck down. So we would get in morbidly obese people and just be sweet people. And then we put them on a food plan, and Cam's joking. In a week's time, they would be horrible. I mean, all of those feelings would come up. We couldn't do anything right for them. Those that were prim and proper, would even use the F word. I mean, the anger began to come up. The fear began to come up. All the shame, everything that a compulsive overeater pushes down. When you go on a food plan, it comes up. I think that is what is missing with this. The people that I talk to on the shot, that they don't have this is extreme. I don't know. I don't think they have it. I think they will have it some. And to have long-term recovery, I think they're going to have to treat the underlying causes and conditions. Okay, so every excess pound represents unresolved pain, anger, fear, shame, and it's usually carrying around someone else's shame. And, what we say all the time, it's not what you're eating, but what's eating you. We've got to get to the part that is, and that's an inside job. It's eating you up from the inside out. And weight often is the solution. It's the solution to pain. It's the solution to trauma, past and present. Past trauma is, I've never worked with an obese person yet that didn't have some past trauma. And also it creates such loneliness. They think, people think that overweight people are so jolly and fun, and they may be out in public. But on the inside, and the big book talks about this, deep in the heart of every addict is that feeling of loneliness. And that's what eating disorder people have, is that loneliness. And we don't know a lot of times how to reach out to people, particularly the morbidly obese. That is a boundary. It was for me. It was a boundary. I was very, 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 very shy. You know, that kept people away from me, that excess weight. And so then, like we've said, the shame, that carried shame. If you've had any type of abuse as a child, uh, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, the perpetrator has no shame. And they put the shame on the child. And they begin to carry that shame. And so when we work with them, a lot of the problems that they're carrying around are not even theirs, you know, but that's what they started eating over. By the time they get to us at 200 or 300 pounds, you know, they are eat up with not only shame that they're carrying, but their own shame of their body. There's a lot of shame around bodies, and there's a lot of body shaming with people. There's some reason that our society feels like they have the right to put down an overweight person. And I don't know that they would ever do that to someone that was anorexic, or no, they'd feel sorry for them. But, you know, I'd walk down the mall with my little kids and I'd be very large, and kids would say things like, "Why are you so fat?" Or they'd say, you know, "that fatty too" before. And my kids would hear that. And that's, but people, even grown people, would take like the privilege of saying something about about my weight. And so we also have a lot of fear that we carry around. And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of compulsive overeaters. Now, I don't think I had this. Maybe I did. I don't know. A lot of them have a fear of losing the weight because they think they will go out in the community and start raping and pillaging every man or woman that they find. They think that they will go into, you know, they get to looking cute, precious, and darling, and that they will go out. And I will tell you, some of them do. There's a high divorce rate, or is this high divorce rate among people that have lost weight because they get cute, precious, and darling, and they a lot of times will go outside the marriage. So a lot of them keep the weight on because they have the fear of what would they do with that body, what would they do with themselves if they were thin. And then another thing that compulsive overeaters have, I've never worked with a compulsive overeater yet that wasn't codependent. I think you, in the dictionary, you can find their names behind control, codependency. You know, a lot of your morbidly obese people are talented. I mean, talented beyond words. And so they can do a lot of different things, even when their disease is out of control. And so they want to control, they'll get into, and I did that, so I can speak to this. You know, I got into every organization. You know, we had PTO at Wiley School, not PTA, but PTO, 4-H, you know, different organizations. And I would get in and I would go to the top. Now, I wouldn't ever let them elect me president of any organization, because what I wanted to do was to control the president. I'd want to get on that nominating committee, and I'd figure out how I could get my candidate, you know, because then you do whatever I wanted to do. I mean, it's about control, folks. And then the food does, it's numbing. It is numbing, but it gets to be, you have to have more and more and more. So, there again, what does the shot does? It quiets the food noise, it reduces the cravings, and it helps physical regulation, but it does nothing, zero, to the trauma, or it doesn't teach how to cope with life on life's terms. It doesn't restore your identity, or it doesn't heal relationships. That's got to take place, because when a person is morbidly obese, it's hard for them to be in a relationship, because eating takes up a lot of time. The thoughts of eating, getting the food, preparing the food, eating raw food, whatever it is, it takes up a lot of time. A lot of times the spouses feel very neglected when they are, it's like being married to an alcoholic. They'd rather have the drug than the relationship. And so what happens on the drug, a lot of times, they'll lose weight but still feel empty, still feel like there's an empty vessel on the inside. They look better, they're looking good, and it's hard to take the compliments. They look better, but they still struggle. They struggle with self-esteem. They struggle with setting boundaries, and losing the weight does not stop the pain. It does not stop the pain. So if nothing underneath changes, nothing changes. We don't need a better diet. We don't need a different life. We need to work on the underlying causes and conditions. We've preached that forever. So it shades. So what recovery is, what it looks like, is having emotional healing. And that takes, I believe, I think the 12 steps is one of the best tools that people can have. Like going to Overeaters Anonymous, going to Eating Disorders Anonymous, go to an eating focused 12-step program. And also either go to treatment, be careful where you go, make sure they're going to do the trauma work, but find you a trauma-informed therapist or a trauma-informed treatment center that they can work with you on the trauma. If you don't, you can go to a treatment center and pay them $90,000 for 30 days. They're out there, or 80 or 60 or whatever. And what you'll come out with, you will have lost some weight, and they will give you they'll do meditation. They'll do some good work. They will not do the shame and anger work. They do not dig down deep. They don't. And I've seen it over and over. There's very few treatment centers that do the things that we do. That's why, that as long as I can keep getting into those rooms, we're going to continue doing those, what do we do? The intensives. We're going to continue to do the intensives. I was telling Cindy earlier, that is such a good package for people. Not everybody needs inpatient treatment. Not everyone can go to inpatient treatment. They have kids, or they have a job, they have, sick parents. There's reasons that they can't go to treatment. So we have put together a really good package. If they can, go to therapy, say 6 weeks before they do an intensive, and identify the trauma, identify the underlying causes and conditions, see a therapist, a trauma-informed therapist, and let them see what is driving the food addiction. And then come and do a week's intensive. And then we work on those underlying causes and conditions, and then follow up with that therapist. And I'm saying not just a quick fix. One of the things is to see a therapist that is trained in different modalities. And there are a lot of people trained in EMDR. I'm not saying this just because Karen is my daughter, but Karen is a fabulous therapist. And then she does EMDR. So what she's done is I watched her. I've now watched Cam. Cam will get someone. She will refer them sometimes to Karen or to Kim. And so they will see them up until time for the intensive. And so by the time they get to us, we're pretty well informed of what the underlying, what we're looking for to help them with. And so do that intensive, and then go right back to, another therapist or go back to Karen or Ken, that EMDR is a way to close up the wound. Once you have exposed the woundedness, the abuse, the sexual abuse, whatever the abuse is, and you do the work, and you do the work, and you do the work. It took me 12 years to work through the abuse that I carried. And then I just found out about EMDR going to a workshop in Dallas by the woman that invented it. And found out there was a woman in Austin that did EMDR. So I went down and I would go back and forth, and I did 8 sessions with her. And that has been, I want to say, 35 years ago. I have not done one bit of trauma work since then. This process works if you work it, but you've got to get some really trained therapists. And talk therapy is good to get your story straight, but after a while, you're going to talk the story to death. You just talk about it. So that's why we're big on experiential therapy. So you need, what you'll find if you, get into some, come and do intensive or, and we do refer people when we see that they need inpatient treatment. We don't hesitate to send them to inpatient and then have them to come back to us to do their emotional healing. So emotional healing is important. And then having a spiritual connection. Many of your compulsive overeaters are very religious people. I work with a lot of religious people while they're dying from compulsive overeating. Now they're very religious, but they're not real spiritual when it comes to the overeating. They don't see it as a problem of like an addiction till they get to us. And so spiritual connection, that is the answer. We feel like that is the answer for any addiction. God can and will heal any area of our life that we're willing to surrender to Him. And I always get amazed at highly religious people. They have the answer, and that's what I tell them. Y'all are godly people. You know more about the Bible. You know more about all this than I'd ever think about. But you never think of inviting God into the food piece or into the prescription drug piece. There's a lot of prescription drug abuse in churches, and they have so much shame around it. So spiritual connection is the answer. And then learning to feel. Once you give up the food, the feelings are going to come up. And on the shot, I wonder, are they flooded with feelings? I don't know. I don't know if they're flooded with the feelings that they haven't. If they are, that would be a wonderful time to address the issues while they're on the shot and losing the weight. And then find healthy coping tools to survive life. Life's not easy to live, and we need some healthy tools. And another thing, we need community. There is nothing like sitting down with someone that has the same disease that you do. Because you don't have to say a whole lot. They know because they are you. When I sit down with someone that weighs 150 pounds overweight, I know them because I was that person. And they can hear me because they hear where I've been. And that's why it's so important to have a community. And there's lovely people, wonderful people who want to try to understand. But unless they have been morbidly obese and gone to Six Flags or any other activity in the hot summertime with a house full of kids, and you've walked and walked and walked, and your legs are so chapped from all the way down to your knees to the point that they are bleeding, you don't talk about that to your thin friends. You don't talk about it to anyone. You suffer in silence. Only those that are morbidly obese can ever even grasp what that's like. It is painful to be obese, people, and to try to manage the stomach and try to manage, and try to weigh 300 pounds and look a little thin. It's hard to do that. And so we need honesty, and it's hard to be honest with people that don't understand the disease. I do not know how it feels to wake up in a drug house. I have no idea. I don't know what it feels like to go out and buy drugs from some of the most horrible people on the universe. And drug addicts put their life in jeopardy every time they go out searching for the drug. I don't understand that, but another drug addict would, And down in the gutter alcoholic, it takes another one to understand where they've come from. We speak the same language. So honesty, and then identify the work that you need to do. Recovery is lived, it's practiced, and we walk it daily. We don't get any days off. And so recovery is going to give us the ability to feel instead of being numb. We're going to have feelings. Human beings are feelers. I mean, God gave them to us. It's what we do with those feelings that make a difference. And we're going to have to learn to sit in discomfort. We can't fix every problem in a second. And when you stop overeating, and I don't know this about people on the shot, but when they stop the overeating, the problems that they've eaten over are still there. I'm hoping that they have the ability now to face those problems head on, and not have to go interrupted with, feeding themselves. And then recovery is about asking for help. And then one of the biggest things is identify the triggers. Identify the triggers. What would always trigger, anything really, toward the end would trigger me to want to eat, but one of the things would be, and it was so contradictory because I was a spotless housekeeper. Whatever I did to, people would say things, well, you keep such a clean house and you're so neat and your kids are so neat and your yard is so neat. And then they would add, for a fat girl or for a fat woman, how do you do all that? People would take I had a boss one time I worked for her at a theater. And she called me in one day, and I'm kind of bragging on myself, but I was 15 years old, and she made me manager of this snack bar at this theater. And she said, Tennie, I wanted to tell you that you are the prettiest, cleanest fat girl I have ever met. Well, that didn't mean anything to say that compliment. So triggers is when you feel bad about yourself. For me, that was one of the biggest triggers. You'd think it would send me into recovery, but it sent me back to the food because it hurts. It hurts so bad. And so we have to replace the behaviors. You do not stop one behavior without replacing it with another one. That's where the 12 steps come in. You cannot live your life out in a therapist's office. We believe in therapy. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't. But you can't depend on a therapist. Well, you can. They'll be there for you as long as you keep writing that check. Don't forget to leave the check at the desk as you go out, because that's how they make their living, And most of them that you go to may not have the same disease that you have. Now, they're going to help you a lot in other ways. But when you go to a 12-step program that is filled with people like you, you're going to hear your story. You hang around long enough, you're going to hear somebody tell your story. It's that language of the heart is what it is. So the shot is not the enemy, but it's not the cure. The shot is not the cure, but it's not the enemy. It's a tool. Use the tool, but do the work. Let the shots support your body while you heal your life. When they first came out with the bypass surgery at Abilene, there was a group of surgeons that came out. Well, there's 3 of them. Came out to talk to me. They wanted us to do the first initial psych eval on their people that they were going to do this surgery on and approve them that they had, mental capacity enough to have the surgery. And what I tried taught these surgeons in, I said, why don't we bring them in here, let them do an intensive, then they go out, you go ahead and schedule the surgery, let them do an intensive on the front end, do the surgery, and then let them recover here for 5 weeks. You think they would entertain that idea? And it was all about money, 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 money. Okay, so let the shot support your body while you heal your life. You know, take the shot, lose the weight, begin to feel good about yourself. And this is the time to heal those that, you know, not only the outside, but the inside. So remember, you're not, people with eating disorders, alcoholics, drug addicts, we're not broken. We're not broken people that needs to be fixed, but we're hurting people that need to get well. We're hurting. And healing comes when we go deeper, and look at those scars that have been there since we were little kids. And by the way, it doesn't take a lot in a day of a life of a child to go inside them to make them feel like they're inferior and that they're not worth anything. So I just encourage people to be real careful what you say to children. And if they have sensitive little hearts, you know, what they're going to do is grow up and be some kind of an addict, because if they start carrying around that negative information, they turn it on themselves, and if they have the brain chemistry, out will pop an addict. So if you've been relying on something external to fix something internal, begin to look within, and that is a good combination. You know, like I keep saying, the shot is going to quiet the noise. It's not, the food is not going to overpower you. And, you know, I mean, I would be trying to teach at the Serenity House, you know, before I went to treatment. I'd be trying to teach, and all I could think of is what I was going to eat when I left there. I couldn't even put through, you know, sometimes, I mean, I'd call a meeting before lunch if I was doing a lecture. A lot of times I'd close early so I could go get me some food, because I had to have food, and had to have lots of it. And they'd go get a cigarette, you know. So the shot may quiet the noise, but it won't heal the wound. So one of the things that I would encourage people to look at is what has food been for you? What has it done for you? What does it do to help you feel? And what are you really hungry for? What are you really hungry for? People with eating disorders have such a longing to live, and it's all covered up with the food. And when you weigh, and I have worked with some obese people that came in with some healthy self-esteem. I don't know where they got it. I do not know. But majority of obese people, their self-esteem is in the gutter. You know, not all of them, but a few can feel good about themselves. And usually they come to treatment at the insistence of their parents or somebody, you know, because they're overweight, they're fat, bothers the family, and they want them thin so they won't be embarrassed by them. You know, so I have seen people that can embrace their body and be content with their body. One of the things I don't hear about anymore since the shot has come out, you know, there was all this movement about accepting the fat, accepting, you know, the way that you are, and all these organizations about, you know, overweight. If y'all remember them, I don't hear anything about them anymore. And what that tells me, I don't know of a fat person yet that really enjoys carrying that weight around. And I think they're fooling themselves if they say they do. So anyway, that's what I have. What do y'all have? Any questions? I'll answer what I can, but I'll say it the first, and I'll say it again. I think the shot works. If it makes you sick, don't take it. That's simple. And stay close to the physician. I'd be real careful. I would not get the shot at Weight Watchers or somewhere else. I would get it from a physician and let them guide you. and get someone, what would be really wonderful if they were trained in the field of obesity. They get maybe 8 hours of all of their schooling. They get maybe 8 hours of nutrition and all. So get someone that is schooled that can help you through with the shot. So, all right, anyone have anything? Hello?
Mary has
Nothing.
her hand